Chapter 18. He was going to arrest me. That was a thought clamoring loudest for my attention as I looked at the approaching figure of Detective Inspector Jordan. He was going to arrest me on suspicion of murder, and before the day was out, I found myself formally charged with beating Neville Considine to death. The murder weapon belonging to man. I couldn't prove where I was on the night in question, and I'd been behaving suspiciously outside Considine's house. It already sounded like an open and shut case, and Jordan was about to close it. "The tie lever's not there," he said, his expression hardening on the silty light cast by the dusty fluorescent tube above us. "No." "Then where is it?" "I'm not sure." "Are you saying you don't have it?" "No." My mind was a tangle. What should I do? Tell him the whole story and hope he believed me? Admit nothing and deny everything? Neither course seemed likely to serve me well. Emma Morosco sounded like a figment of my imagination even to me, but I knew she was real, and that was my only chance, was to do whatever she had anticipated. "It's here somewhere. I'm not the tidiest of people. There aren't that many places to look." Jordan glanced around at the cobweb corners, and I realized he too was struggling to catch up with events. He'd come here to tie up a loose end, not to nail the prime suspect. "I'm going to have to insist on seeing it, Mr. Napier." "Of course." I sat myself on the table. I remembered now. "It's in the cupboard." "What cupboard?" "There, under the bench." I pointed to the work bench running along most of the rear wall of the garage, and the double-doored cupboard beneath it. The front bumper of the Stag was resting a few inches from the door handle. I cleaned up some of the tools over the weekend and put them in there. The tie lever must be among them. Back the car up and you can have a look for yourself." "Okay," he frowned at me. "If you're sure that's where it is." "I'm positive. Hold on." I squeezed past him, climbed into the car, and started the engine, aware of him watching me, forcing myself to move slowly. Then his attention switched as the cupboard and light eased the car back. "That'll do," he called, raising his hand to signal that the gap was sufficient, but it was also the signal for me to put my foot down hard on the accelerator. The Stag roared backwards out into lane, and as I swung it around, I heard the rear wing crunch into our parked car. Then I slammed it into drive and took off through the potholes. In the mirror, I saw Jordan around the garage and fling himself into the car. He was bound to see which way I turned onto the main road. I chose right towards Reading, narrowly missing a post office man in the process. But I didn't have a big enough lead. Jordan would contact the police on his road, and pretty soon every scoring car in Reading will be on the lookout for me. It was going to be a short chase to nowhere unless I took the first step, checked in the mirror to be sure he wasn't yet in sight, and slowed into an almost unbearable 30-mile-per-hour as I followed the quiet residential road round towards its end. There was an access track, as I remembered, leading under the railway line to the sewage farm, and a footpath beyond that across the field to the river, where it linked with a towpath. I could walk back into Pangbourne by the route without being visible from the road and catch a train at the station, either into London or up to Oxford from there. But it didn't matter where for the moment. I simply had to hold my nerve and get well clear of the area before Jordan and his reinforcements realized I'd abandoned the car. I parked outside the last house in the road, locked up, and casually walked away towards the railway bridge, wondering if at any moment I'd hear Jordan shouting for me to stop. But I heard nothing. He'd fallen for it. As soon as I was out of sight of the house, I stepped up my pace, bludgeoning my brain to work, to think as I went, making a run for it, as I would spell certain guilt in the minds of the police. In the space of half an hour, I turned myself from my reputable businessman about to negotiate a bank loan into a fugitive who could soon be the target of a nationwide manhunt. It was difficult to hold panic at bay. What could I hope to achieve? What, in the name of sweet reason, could I possibly accomplish by such a mad course of action? I had no answer except that I knew who'd really murdered Neville Considine, Emma Morasco. No one but me would even believe she existed, let alone try to find her. Once I was in police custody, she was free and I was finished. But if I could just stay one step ahead of the law for long enough, I might be able to get the better of her. I was angry as well as frightened. Using me to trick money out of my father was one thing, framing me for the murder of her accomplice quite another. I wanted revenge now as well as injustice. I wanted to wipe the smile I could all too easily imagine off her face for good, to finish it between us on terms rather than her between us on my terms rather than hers. It was a grey and gloomy morning, with a chill edge to the breeze and a threat of rain in the air. I wasn't dressed for riverside strolling, and I felt acutely conspicuous, but I knew I wasn't really. The few ramblers and dog walkers I encountered on the towed path passed me without a second glance. No one was interested in me, although later, when my name and likeness were flashed up in the local TV news, they might think back and realise who I was, but for the moment I had a good chance of putting a lot of mile between me and the place where I was known, so long as my nerve held at any rate. When I reached the bridge where the Church Road crossed the river, I took a long, hard look up and down before dashing across and cutting round to the railway station. The mid-morning lull seemed almost too profound to be believed. The first train due was London bound, but going through Reading, where the search would be at its keenest, seemed even riskier than setting it out on the platform for an extra 10 minutes until I could catch an Oxford train. Those 10 minutes millimetered their way by uneventfully. Then a train pulled lethargically in. I climbed aboard and put Pangbourne behind me at last. It was half-hour run to Oxford, and on the way I began to assemble a plan of action. I reckon the police probably didn't yet know that Constantine's recently acquired wealth. The county wanted the money paid into was a City of London branch of an international bank. Discretion was doubtless their byword. Emma had to have access to the money, since cutting out her partner was an obvious motive for murdering him, so it was presumably a joint account. But she couldn't simply withdraw the whole lot now, because the timing, if it ever came to light, would look highly suspicious. If I'd been her, I'd have bided my time and waited for me to be arrested and charged, and the hue and cry to die down generally before pocketing the loot and disappearing. While I was on the run, she was vulnerable, but only if I could find her, along with some hard evidence of her involvement with Constantine. Then maybe the police would listen to me. But where was I to start looking for her? How could I hunt her while others were hunting me? At Oxford, I walked into the city centre, drew as much as I could against my credit card from a bank, bought a raincoat, a bag, some toiletries and underwear, and then went back to the station and caught the next train to Birmingham. The anonymity of a big city was the best refuge I could think of, and with any luck the transaction in Oxford would have them barking up the wrong tree for a while. From New Street Station I headed out more or less at random and booked into the Holiday Inn under a false name. I lay there in my room for the rest of the day, watching the grey afternoon darken over the city and resisting the powerful temptation to get wrecked on the contents of the minibar. The early evening news on the television didn't mention me or Constantine, but I knew a full-scale search would nevertheless be in motion. When it was dark, I went out and watched the rush-hour traffic surging round Paradise Circus, ate a fast-food dinner, and walked the streets aimlessly. Every pub I passed sang a siren song, and only the thought that I'd be handing victory to Emma on a play by drinking myself into oblivion gave me the strength of purpose to walk on by. Eventually, when I was weary enough to sleep, despite all anxieties, I crept back to the hotel. Although I hadn't made the national news on television, the national newspapers were a different matter. The bunch I bought from the shop near the hotel well before the dawn next morning all carried inside page reports that the police were seeking a Berkshire businessman who they believed might be able to assist them with the inquiry of the brutal murder of a Clacton old age pensioner over the weekend. Detective Inspector Jordan of Essex CID was widely quoted urging 45-year-old Christian Terence Napier to contact them without further delay. A couple of papers also printed a muddy photographic likeness, which I recognised as the 42-year-old Christian Napier in attendance at his niece's 21st birthday party. The family photograph album was the only possible source, and it was all too easy to imagine how distressed my mother must have been at having to relinquish it. My father, however, was evidently maintaining a stiff upper lip. At the tail end of one of the reports, he was quoted in support of Jordan. "We want our son to contact the police and sort all this out as soon as possible." I could have done with an expression of confidence in my innocence, but if he made one, it had been edited out. My father, of course, was likely to be almost as hard-pressed as I was myself, guarding his tongue and his secrets zealously, while coping with my mother's no doubt distraught reactions to events. It wouldn't be long, I reckon, before he bolted to his customary haven at times of stress, the golf club. Sooner or later I'll be able to catch him at the 19th hole. I made my first foray to a call box around noon. My third, a couple of hours later, was successful. I gave the barman the name of Dad's counter and was handed over without demur. Anton? No, Dad, it's me. Listen, I realise you can't speak freely, but do your best. I mean, one hell of a fix. I didn't kill Constantine. I never thought you did. Pity you didn't tell the papers that. I'm in a difficult position myself. Do the police know about the money? Apparently not. Have you? And you haven't told them? No. Well, I might have to. You do appreciate that, don't you? I'm not sure I do. The girl killed him, Dad. The one who set me up. For the money, presumably. So it's hard to see how I can get out of this without revealing that Constantine was blackmailing you. You'll have to. I'm trying to tell you that just may not be possible. I'll do everything I can to ensure it is. What do you mean? I took the precaution of employing an intermediary in the transaction. I'm assured that they will render it deniable if you take my meaning. Deniable? I'm incurring a hefty financial loss, and I feel, in all fairness, that should be the full extent of my involvement. You what? In the circumstances, there's nothing more I can say, and with that, quietly and consistently, he put down the phone. Desperate situation calls for desperate remedies. Standing in the call box with my father's parting words echoing in my mind, I knew I had to act decisively. Sulking around Birkenham, waiting to see whether my luck ran out before my money wasn't going to achieve anything. I had only one spin hope of nailing in my Morosco, and it was time to take it. I picked up the telephone, started dialing. Hi there, you've answered. It's me, Chris. Chris? Sounds like you've seen a newspaper. Yes, and I couldn't believe what I read in it. Then don't. I didn't do it. Believe me. Then why have you gone on the run? Because I'm the only person who really knows who did it. And I have to stay free until I find them. Can't you tell the police? They wouldn't believe me, but I'm hoping you would. If you heard it, I'll need your help. You're the only one I can turn to. What about your family? The police will be watching them, but they may not have found out about you yet. Have you heard from them? No. There you are then. Besides, why would I turn to my ex-wife in my hour of need after the things she said about me in the divorce court? Exactly, why would you? Remember the day you caught sight of me drunk in Shaftesbury Avenue as you rode past in a taxi? I remember. That's the reason. I'm not drunk, but I am in dire straits. I need to stop the taxi and get out. Will you do that? Will you give me a chance? It's all I'm asking. You look terrible, said Mew, by way of greeting 3 hours later. The reflection I could see over her shoulder in the night blackened window of the buffet at Crewe Station, railway station, suggested she was understanding the case, but I comforted myself that the worse I looked, the less I resembled my photograph in the newspaper. Mew, her radiant contrast demonstrated the beneficial effects of the outdoor life and vegan diet. Her clear skin beauty defying all attempts at camouflage. She was clad in a weird mix of hippie and army surplus, but somehow managed to wear it like a cocktail dress. Thanks for coming, I mumbled, sipping on my coffee. I wondered if you'd had second thoughts after I'd rung. I did, but you still came. You gave me plenty of experience of being stood up when we were married, Chris. I wouldn't want to make anybody feel that way. I winced. If that's how you feel, it is, but I'm here, so you may as well just say your piece. Things must be even worse than the newspapers made them sound for you to ask me for help. They're as bad as they can be, I said, leaning across the table towards her and lowering my voice. I've been fitted up by a professional. And will this professional be the woman who posed as my solicitor? No, but you could say they're related. So I'm partly to blame for the trouble you're in. Is that it? Not really, but if believing you are will make you help me. She sighed. What do you want me to do? I want you to phone Access CID when you get home and tell them I've been in touch. Say I'm short of money because I'm afraid to make any traceable withdrawals from my bank account, and I've asked you to tide me over. Say you agreed to meet me tomorrow afternoon at Holyhead Ferry Terminus to hand me over some cash. Holyhead? You make whatever details you like. Say I'm thinking of slipping over to Ireland or something. It doesn't matter. Just as long as you focus attention a long way from where I'm going to be. And where's that? Clacton. She raised eyebrows. The scene of the crime. Perhaps that's convinced you I'm innocent. Oh, I'm convinced. But are you convinced I won't tell them the truth, I mean? I looked her straight in the eye. Yes, I am. How can you be so sure? Because you've always been painfully honest. That's why you left me, if you remember. She let slip a reluctant smile. What happens if I crack under pressure after you failed to show up in Holyhead? You won't. Just think They'll just think I got cold feet or spotted their surveillance team. They won't blame you, especially if you lay on the embittered ex-wife routine with a heavy hand. And later, if they find out you're in Clacton, they'll assume it was a deliberate blind. Besides, by then it'll all be over. How do you mean? I only get one chance, Miff. If I blow it, I may as well turn myself in. This is make or break. After seeing Miff off on the train back to Llandudno, I caught a cross-country stopper to Nottingham and holed up overnight in a cheap hotel near the station. Next morning I headed on east to Norwich, then struck south to Colchester and picked up the branch line to Clacton. It was a strange journey of leaden November skies and empty trains, of edging closer to my destination without seeming to approach it. I was consciously avoiding London and anywhere I was even vaguely known, yet unconsciously I was also delaying the moment when my carefully considered plan took effect. I'd weighed the options and reduced them to this solitary throw of the dice, but the odds were stacked against me. I didn't expect to succeed, yet I knew I couldn't afford to fail. I was pining my hopes on constantly suspicious and secretive nature. I felt sure he'd have foreseen the possibility of Emma moving against him and reckoned he might well have planned to move against her. Emma's anonymity was her crucial advantage, so logically, that was what he should have sought to undermine. If so, somewhere in his house there ought to be a clue to her identity and whereabouts, an incriminating piece of paper, a telltale scrap of clinching evidence. The police might have removed it, of course, in the search for evidence against me, but I was willing to bet they were content to await my capture before pursuing the questioning of a motive. 4 days had elapsed since the murder. If they had rooted around 17 Waldorf Road, their readings should certainly be at an end by now. With any luck, the investigation team would be in Holyhead, staking out the ferry terminal, leaving the way clear for me to put my fragile theory to the test. I reached Clacton at the listless outset of a dull Wednesday afternoon, my anxiety heightened by the knowledge that my photograph was bound to have been splashed around more widely here than in Birmingham or Nottingham. I'd bought a soft-brimmed tweed hat that I wouldn't have been seen dead in before leaving Birmingham the previous day, and wore it now to make myself less recognisable, but I actually put more faith in the probability of what I was doing. Nobody would reasonably expect to see me walking the streets of Clacton. Doing so seemed like a little short of lunatic to me. When I confronted the terrace lengths of Waldorf Road in the cold bloody 20 minutes later and started along it on the even number side. A woman with a child in a pushchair bustled out of gate ahead of me and passed by as if I didn't exist. Then I came abreast of a number 17. There was no policeman guarding the door, nor any sign of murder recently done. If Constantine had been beaten to death on the premises, it would have been a different story, of course. As it was, I moved on before anyone behind a netted curtained window could start thinking I might be loitering with sinister intent, counting the houses beyond number 17 as I went Waldorf Road into Inner T-junction, where I turned left, crossing over to follow the flanks of the back garden on Constantine's side of the road. Between them and the back gardens of the houses and the next parallel street was a narrow surface alley, running straight as arrow between the rear wall of each. Wooden gates were set in the walls, giving access to the gardens beyond, but no view into them. Still, it was a simple matter to count back to the gate serving number 17, relieved to find the alley empty, save of dented dustbins, cat-gnawed refuse sacks, and sicked-up Chinese takeaways. I headed down it, reaching Constantine's gate. I tried the handle. Predictably, it was locked. After a reassuring glance in both directions, I grasped the top of the gate and pulled myself up far enough to see over. There was no one visible in neighbouring gardens. I looked to have a clear run. I got some sort of foothold on the handle and scrambled over. I'd somehow expected Constantine's garden to be a wilderness, but it was actually neat and keenly worked, with a greenhouse, vegetable patch, clipped lawn, and recently creosoted shed. This meant I had no choice but to walk straight into up the concrete path of the back door, and pray no one saw me from the house on either side. So far as I could tell, I made it unobserved. Then the real complication started. The door itself was solidly constructed, which left me a straight choice between the conservatory and the scullery window. I chose a conservatory. I grabbed a broom that was propped against a drain pipe and was about to spear a hole in one of the panes when I noticed that the stay on the other side hadn't been secured. The window was sitting slightly proud of its frame, as if the wood had expanded and it didn't quite fit. Relieved to be able to operate in relative silence, I abandoned the broom, took from my pocket a screwdriver I brought along for just such contingencies, and prized the window ajar. Then I pulled it fully open with nothing worse than a creak, and gingerly clambered in. The conservatory seemed to be halfway territory between Constantine's horticultural punctiliousness and his domestic squalor, a prickly forest of healthily plump cacti flourishing amidst rusting bird cages and rotting deck chairs. I hurried through to the back living room, where the mildewed roof of the conservatory added a shallow subfice to the room. It was furnished after fashion, but the chair and tables were oversized by an obstacle course of cardboard boxes. According to the labels, they contained bulk purchases of baked beans, tomato soup, tinned fruit, ham, tea, soup, salt, sugar, and God knows what besides, hoarded as a hedge against inflation or worldwide famine or some arcane calamity of Constantine's imagining. I picked my way between them, sighting nothing in the ways of cabinets or cupboards where the sort of thing I was looking for could be hidden. Emerged into the hall and headed for the front room where he'd entertained me a month before. The room was as I remembered. There was no immediate sign. The police had searched it. A bureau stood in one corner and an obvious place to start. But first I made for the tea chest in the alcove next to the chimney breast. It was still there and still full of the odds and ends Constantine had removed from Nicky's flat. But at least one item was missing, the scrapbook. Had the police taken it? If so, why? If not, what had happened to it? Then I spotted the tortoiseshell frame of the trio of pictures Constantine had shown me of Nicky as a young man, Frida as a baby, and of Michaela. I lifted it out of the box and held it up to the light. The photograph of Michaela was different. Gone was the swimsuit teenager who matured into Amber Moresco. In her place was the little girl who had become Pauline Lucas. There she was in the self-same shot Ethel Jager had a copy of, where she'd been when the picture stood at her mother's bedside, and where she'd have gone on being but for the need to deceive me. I dropped the picture back into the box, crossed to the bureau, and lowered the flap. The contents looked innocent enough. Household bills, a stack of seed catalogues, a litter of old envelopes on which Constantine seemed to have carried out long division and multiplication exercises, and a scatter of paper clips, pencil stubs, and rubber bands. The drawer beneath the flap seemed more promising at first glance. There was half a dozen dog-eared notebooks inside, interleaved with scraps of paper, but inspection revealed them to be account books relating to freelance electrical work he carried out over the past 40 or 50 years. The loose sheets to be notes of the names and addresses of clients. Cupboards below the drawer was no better, crammed as it was with what looked like several decades worth of Reader Digest. I tried the glass-fronted cabinets next, checked the china vases and EPNS teapots and varnish ornaments, box for student documents, but there was nothing in any of them. I went into the hall, opened the cupboard under the stairs, and glanced in at a museum piece vacuum cleaner lurked in amidst a cobwebbed jungle of pipes, cables, meters, and junction boxes. There was no prospect of joy there. I closed the door, moved to the front of the stairs, and ran up them two at a time. The doors of the upper room stood open. A bath was visible beyond one, a loo beyond the other. The next room I could see into as I reached the landing contained a bed and wardrobe. I turned towards it. As I did so, there was a faint noise to my right that made me freeze in mid-stride. It was a sharp drawing of human breath, and unmissable as it was unnerving. For a fraction of a second I thought I'd misheard. Then my eyes swiveled towards the room at the far end of the landing, and I glimpsed a figure sitting on the bed within. The hairs on the back of my neck bristled. There was somebody there, rising now and staring straight at me, a woman, her face casting shadow by the window beside her. "You," she said in a voice, and I recognized her voice at once. Thanks for listening.